If you pay your child support now, you'll thank me later because you won't owe the interest. And as you get older and your children are emancipated, you can live free, not dodging from a process server or a sheriff coming to get you for your back child support arrearage.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Thank Me Later show with me, your host, Jini Thornton, where we help you master your money and transform your life. So our mastery today, we're going to master a little child support today. Love talking about this topic. Whenever I talk about this or have my amazing guest, Tanya Mitchell Graham,
Hello.
honey, people come out the woodwork when we start talking about child support. Ooh, Tanya Mitchell Graham.
They better come on and get this information, right?
They better come get it. Well, Tanya Mitchell Graham, who has been a colleague and friend for 20 years now.
Yes.
Been practicing law 32 years.
Yes.
Family law. TMG,
PC,
yes, the law office of Tanya Mitchell Graham here in Atlanta, Georgia, Metro Atlanta. And I had the pleasure of meeting you 20 years ago this year because we had a mutual client.
Yes.
And that actually was my very first child support experience.
Ah.
Yeah, so just, of course, I had heard of it. I knew what child support was, but I had never gone through a child support proceeding.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, this is a lot of work.
Yes.
I'm just like, why is this so hard? I'm like, there's a lot to this. And so because...
And you're a CPA.
And I'm a CPA. And I just think about, I just can never forget the document request that we got from you all with all the tax returns and bank statements and credit card statements, all the stuff that we needed to produce. I've been an accountant and business manager in the entertainment industry. This is my 28th year, Tanya.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But like you said, that was easy for us. You could give us that list and we could get through it very quickly. I'm like, how do people do this?
Right.
How do people actually get through this?
Or prepare the financial affidavit. Don't forget that.
That financial affidavit.
Which is mandatory.
Right. And I wish it were just as simple as knowing what the child's needs were and parents coming up with the number that they agreed upon, but there's so much more to that. So we're going to get into child support today.
And the law has changed since we met. It changed in 2007.
Wow.
And so when we met, what you could do is look at each party's income, and if we were talking about one child, it might be 17 to 23% of the gross income of the dad. And a lot of people thought that's not fair. And then, based on the number of children, it would be like a sliding scale. So now we have child support that's calculated by a statutory child support calculator. And we don't know what the child support is until we plug in numbers such as income, medical insurance, daycare, etc. There may be certain deviations. There may be other child support obligations. And we have to plug all this into the worksheet, and then it will tell you the number.
So there's some math involved, what I hear you saying. There's some preparation and some math involved.
A lot.
Okay.
It's still a lot of work.
So just to kind of set the stage a little bit today, I have done a little research. It says about 30% of parents who are owed child support payments get nothing, according to the Census Bureau. Mm-hmm. About 30%.
Okay, there's a couple of reasons why. Some women, and I'll just in this scenario, we'll say that the woman is the custodial parent. Some women don't pursue child support. Now, why? I have no earthly understanding because children are expensive.
Right. And as a mother, that makes no sense to me.
There are women who will not pursue child support, but would instead rather keep the child away from the dad. And what they're doing there is they're ultimately hurting both themselves and the child. But there are a lot of women who will simply not pursue child support. And then they'll say, well, I'm not going to put him on child support like like that's something good. It's horrible. Now, if a gentleman is voluntarily paying, that's one thing. I understand that. Right. But if no money is being sent for that child, that's part of the reason why some women don't get child support. Here's another one. There are men who will literally quit their job to avoid paying child support. Let's say there's a court order for child support. They will quit their job and they will bounce around and they will hide I personally know 2 gentlemen like this. Personally.
And we're talking about taking care of their own child, not someone else's child.
No, their own baby.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't want to pay.
At all. They think the money is for the mother. And because of the disdain that they have for the mother, they don't want to give her a cent, a penny. Not understanding and recognizing that the children are expensive. They have needs, food, clothing, shelter, etc.
It's expensive raising children.
So there are those guys who just hide, duck, dodge. They're pretty good at it. Then there are the people who have child support orders through the Department of Child Support Services. I never recommend that a custodial parent start their child support case there. They're good for collection sometimes, but when you're establishing child support, they will not do the discovery to get a true and correct picture of the income of the father.
I want to, in layman's terms, try to explain what you just said. So
Okay.
instead of just going down to whatever county that you live in, filing, you're saying...
With DCSS, the Department of Child Support Services, or the state,
Okay.
like a lot of
Instead of
people
just
say.
running down to the state,
Yes.
you're suggesting that people engage an attorney and get some representation and help. That way, you will get what you are entitled to.
It would be in their best interest, particularly if dad is self-employed. Because DCSS, they have access to the Department of Labor records.
Right.
So if dad has W-2 income, well, okay, that's pretty
Easy
good.
breezy.
Yeah,
Right.
easy peasy.
Right.
But if dad is self-employed and they don't know, they're not going to, Department of Child Support Services is not going to go through dad's business bank statements and see where he pays for personal expenses with his business credit card and then pays that with the business bank statement. They're going to see whatever he decides to pay himself, which may be next to nothing.
Right.
You know, $2,000
Right.
a month, and he's
If
living in
that.
a $500,000 house, and he's driving a Maybach, and
Right.
yeah. So they're not going to do that work. So an attorney will do that work. An attorney will do discovery, and that's a process, in litigation. But it's worth it in the long run because you'll get a better number. Now, then, if you want them to collect it for you, that's one thing. But they're really just a collection agency, and I never recommend them to establish a child support order.
Okay. So, y'all, what I'm hearing, if you have a child with an entrepreneur, sounds like you need some legal representation to make sure that you are getting what your child is entitled to. It's not what you're entitled to, but what the child is entitled to.
Right. And don't forget, there are people who have W-2 income who have, side businesses that make money. And so if you go to DCSS, they're only going to look at the W-2 income. They're not even going to get into anything else because they don't do that work. Just the sheer volume of cases, they can't.
They can't do that. So because you've opened the door talking about entrepreneurs, because when you and I have worked on common clients, all of our clients own
Yes,
their own businesses.
They do.
And like I said, just the sheer amount of documentation and information that we've had to share. Can you just, for someone who has a child with an entrepreneur, and we're talking about men or women, because women pay child support too, not
They
just
do.
men. Yeah, that's becoming more common, I'm sure.
It is. Although what's interesting is, I've gotten quite a few dads custody, more than I can name. I think the first gentleman I got custody was in 1993. Got him custody of his twin infants. All right. Well, for whatever reason, guys will say, I don't want the child support. I don't recommend that at all. I recommend that if dad doesn't need the child support money, then mom pays that into an account for the children that they could use later on.
Absolutely.
So
The child will always have a need.
always,
Yes.
even if, the child is affluent based on the parents or whatever, they still are going to have a need. So I don't recommend that dads waive their child support. I recommend that they get it and put it in an account for the child or children.
Yeah, I have a cousin who had custody of his daughter starting at she was age 5. And from that point all the way through, he got child support. And I'm like, absolutely.
That's right.
If it were reversed, if she were with her mother,
Yeah.
you would be paying her.
Absolutely.
There's no reason why she is not
Nobody
paying
would
you.
let him skirt.
No way.
No way.
No way. Let's talk about these entrepreneurs, though.
Yes.
So when you have this child support case, because I understand the complexity, it's not just this W-2 that you could look
Right.
up in the Department of Labor. What advice do you have for people who are like, listen, I know this non-custodial parent, they're hiding money. I'm not just
Right.
going to blame it on men, but what advice?
Right.
Like, what are some preparation tips?
Absolutely. Before filing any type of litigation case, child support and family law, gather some of your evidence. Okay. So let's say if the non custodial parent is living in a beautiful home that they let you come to sometimes,
Right.
you need to snap a few pictures, get some information, even get the address. Some people go to a house and don't get the address. We can pull the deed. We can see how much it costs.
Right.
We can see when it was purchased. We can see the deed to secure that. We can see if they paid for it outright, if they bought it in a tax sale. We can see all that. So I can't tell you how many people don't know the other party's address. It's weird. They have been there.
That's crazy to me, but keep going. Keep
All right.
going.
You need the address, okay?
Right.
If you see them with a lot of jewelry, the vehicles, see them taking a lot of trips. Now, people love to brag on Instagram.
Oh, my goodness.
My good. If you don't, give me some screenshots.
Right.
Yes.
Just in case they start pulling that stuff down.
Screenshots of evidence.
Right.
In court, especially if they have a public profile. Either way, but screenshots of evidence. So get some screenshots of all the things they're doing, all the trips, all the spending, screen record the videos. All of this is evidence in court. I got a case where a guy, he was an entrepreneur. I represent the mom in this one. Guy's claiming he has no money, but he's very, very involved in real estate, and he's constantly bragging about it. And posting it.
Right.
So, you got to go on and grab that and use it in court, because he'll get in court and he'll be very astute and
Right.
articulate and credible until I start handing off Exhibit A.
A, B, C, and D. Right.
Yeah.
What are some common myths? Are there some myths about child support that you hear people say? You're like, why do people keep saying that? Any misconceptions?
Oh, man, so many. I mean, dog, where do you start? Well, here's one with joint custody that I think is so crazy. People think if there's joint custody, no child support will be paid.
Oh, I hear that all the time.
That's not true. It's based on the income of both parties. So, for instance, if mom and dad have the child 50% of the time, let's say on this one, mom makes $20,000 a month and dad makes $2,000 a month. He's W-2 working wherever. Is that fair for the child to live one way with mom and then go live a different way with dad? No, mom should be paying, in that example, mom should be paying dad some child support. So what would happen is we would do a child support worksheet and we would give mom a parenting time deviation, but she would still need to pay child support. So for all the ladies, switch it back to the way it normally is. So for the ladies, where you got this guy who's a millionaire and, you might be a school teacher making $60,000 a year, he makes $2 million a year, 50-50 time does not equal no child support. That is a big, huge myth. So in Georgia, he can get some credit for his parenting time deviation, but there's still supposed to be money coming to mom. And so mom needs a lawyer for that.
For sure.
For sure.
Now, is pay to play a myth? And what I mean by that is you always hear, well, if they're not paying, they don't get any visitation.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. When you withhold parenting time, you're trying to give dad the child now. You're trying to give him custody.
Forget the money.
Yeah, you're trying to give him custody.
So if
that is wrong.
If you have a parent who's not paying, there's a child support order in place. Father or mother is not paying.
Okay.
And you're like, so now you can't see son, daughter, whomever. And you're saying that's a huge no-no.
Yes. Now, let's say there's no court order. So let's say there's a child support order, but there's no court order for visitation. So a lot of ladies play this game, especially here in Georgia. If you're not married to the mother, then the father has zero rights to the child. Let me say it again. Say it to the camera. Listen, dads, if you are not married to the mother of your child in Georgia, when that child's born, you have zero rights to parenting time and visitation, but you do have an obligation to pay child support. So in Georgia, dads have to legitimate their child first, which is not signing the birth certificate.
Okay.
Signing the birth certificate is not legitimation. It's a court proceeding where you file to legally declare that this is my
child.
Yes. Once you do that, you're on equal grounds with the mother as it relates to custody and everything else. All right. So let's say we're going back. Mom has a child support order. Dad has nothing. So he's not paying. Probably not a good thing for him to do either.
For sure.
I'm not condoning his behavior.
Sure.
But if mom refuses, this is what he's going to do, especially if he has money. He's going to come over here to somebody like me and say, hey, I want to start exercising parenting time with my child. We're going to go ahead and legitimate, and we're going to get parenting time. Whatever you did before there was a court order, you can't do that now, because now mom will be in contempt. So if there is a court order for dad to have parenting time, mom will be in contempt. He can file contempt. What are the penalties for contempt? Well, number one, you could be incarcerated. Number two, the judge can order you to give dad makeup time if there's, an order. If you do it multiple times, the judge can change custody.
So not allowing the parent, whether they're paying or not, time with their child, you can actually lose custody of your children.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
If you do it all, yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Another, I don't know if this is a myth or if this is a fact. I hear people complain all the time. They live in one state, the non-custodial parent is in another state, and they always talk about how difficult it is, how hard. It's so much harder. I've heard so many women just give up and say, forget about it. Is it harder when they're out of state?
I think it has some challenges, but nothing that an attorney can't hurdle, So usually we're probably going to file, you can do one or two things. Now, in this instance, you may want to utilize the state and use your IFSA. It's a Uniform Child Support Act, where you file the petition here in Georgia, and then they will domesticate it. See, you got to know where dad is, first of all.
For sure.
Remember, I told you a lot of people don't know the address. Or we can file it here, especially if, I normally do some things where I'll have dad come down for some visitation, and then I'll just have him served right then with the child support action. He's been wanting to see that baby anyway. Let's let him come and see the baby.
Come on now.
And we're going to serve him with a child support action. He's stuck. You just need a lawyer that would navigate through some of this stuff. That's how I would get him.
Now, you and
Which is very easy.
Easy to do. Good strategy. Good.
It
now,
works.
I hope some parents are not going to be avoiding seeing their kids now, afraid that they're going to get served. Another question for you. In the context of you have two parents not married, getting along fabulously.
Yes.
There's no issues.
Right.
Co-parenting well. Not fighting about money. Seem to be in agreement on who's paying for what. In that situation, do you think it's necessary to formalize the child support? Is there a benefit to formalizing an agreement?
In that scenario, maybe. But I will tell you, for dad, he's at peril.
Because
he's not married to mom, and mom has all the rights here in Georgia. So I have a lot of people who are still together as parents, and I will have dad file a petition to legitimate the child. Not only does that put dad on equal standing with mom, it also gives the child rights to inherit from the dad. Because when the parties are not married, the children can't inherit from that dad here in Georgia. So you got to legitimate.
I have never heard that before.
Okay, well, you've heard of legitimation, though, filing a petition to legitimate, and you're always focused on the fact that dad wants to establish his rights.
Right.
But this is how I get people to sign it uncontested when they're still together. The child can't inherit from dad.
I did not know that.
Right.
I did not know that. All
Welcome
right.
to
So what I'm
Georgia.
hearing, for those of you dads in Georgia, please make sure if you are not married to your child's mother, you have got to go through the legitimation process.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can do it by
Non-negotiable.
agreement. You can do it by agreement.
Nice and easy. Layup easy.
Everybody sign, and,
Right.
and it's good. And,
Okay.
and I think it's beneficial for the child.
Yeah. I was going to say that sounds like it's what's best for the child.
It is.
Okay.
And that's what courts are always going to do here.
Right.
Most courts everywhere.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Tanya, we're going to go to the hotline. Of
Okay.
course, we've got a young man who has a question for you
Okay.
today.
Hi, my name is Jared from Atlanta, and I recently had a child with someone I'm not in a relationship with, and she's cool as long as I'm not dating or talking to anyone else, but she always hints that if I'm with someone else, she'll keep me from seeing my daughter and put me on child support. I know courts aren't really ever in favor of the dad, and I don't want to be kept from my child, so what should I do?
I bet you this happens all the time.
All day. All day. So what happens is, even when the parties break up, the mom is still pretty cool with that until such time as he openly dates somebody else.
No.
Lord, please don't get engaged. The war will start. And if you get married, she might move to another state.
Absolutely.
So,
Hot and
yeah,
pissed.
yes. So it's imperative that the gentleman, the caller, he needs to legitimate that child right away. Now, keep in mind when dads file a petition for legitimation, they can also establish their parenting time in the same action, but child support will always be established in there too if it isn't already. So dads can't like run from the child support obligation. All right. You can't file the petition to legitimate and then get your legitimation and your visitation and the order is silent on child support.
Right. You got to pay.
It's a necessary evil, but the fact of the matter is that children need to be supported. But sometimes dad can file the petition, and depending on what the relationship has been with the child, sometimes I file that petition to legitimate and I get joint custody right out the bat, because the parties have been together for a little while and dad's been involved in the child's life. So we're not going to rip dad out now. We're not going to make him a weekend dad when he's been there, you know. And some people break up and they do week on, week off. That's beautiful. We need to hurry up and file. We need to continue to do the week on, week off. That's joint custody, you know.
Now, what advice do you have? And this is for women too, not just for the men. When I've heard this story a million times, dad goes on, starts dating someone else. Now she's hot. Is there anything that he can do? Is there a particular conversation? Is there a right approach to make sure?
Yes, it would be very nice if dad would introduce his new lady to the mother of his child. Depending, you know, some people you can't really.
Right.
Let's say mom is in her right mind.
Right.
And she's a fully mature adult woman and recognizes that we're not going to be together and you're going to have other people in your life and so am I. It's important to try to introduce mom to this new lady if she's special. Now, dad can't introduce every single woman he's got a one-off with. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It's one and done.
Right.
I'm talking about a real somebody who's going to be around the child. So that mom needs to meet that lady. It's going to be important, at least for him to try to make the effort. I've seen gentlemen try, and it doesn't go so well, but sometimes it does. So that's important.
Tanya, on this Thank Me Later show, we're really focused on making sure people have resources. Mm-hmm. Is there any particular websites or articles or anything where you drive people to so they can educate themselves about the process or prepare to even engage somebody like you?
Well, again, you know, because I've been practicing so long, you know, I tell them they can Google whatever they want to about that. But because I've had so many different scenarios, probably their very scenario multiple times, I give them usually 3 different ways that the procedure can go. And I base that on the facts of their case.
Now, I'm sure you see this a lot, and I hear this all the time too, where people are fighting because they don't agree on spending priorities for children. Dad wants private school, mom doesn't, vice versa. Whatever activities, what advice do you have for that situation?
Right. Well, I mean, are we in court yet? if we're in court, we can decide all those things in the court proceeding. So in Georgia, what happens is, let's say parties are getting a divorce and the children are now in middle school and they've been in private school the whole time. Well, the court may order that the children continue in the school that they're in. You know, if they're in a Woodward or St. Pius or whatever.
Right.
But let's say that the child does not have a history of private school. A court in Georgia is not going to order private schools.
No.
They're not going to make it mandatory.
Because there's no history of that.
Correct.
Right.
But they're just not going to mandate it. You know, if there's a history, yes, because what the courts want to do is disrupt the children as much as possible. And so if dad says, okay, well, I want private school, what I normally do is either negotiate it, or sometimes I can get the judge to order it that if dad wants private school, dad's going to pay for private school. So you can get what you want, but, I guess you got to pay to play.
Right.
So if dad wants that, he may have to pay for it. Now, extracurricular activities, that falls under joint legal custody. And so joint legal custody is where parents make major decisions for the children. So the areas are education, extracurricular activities, non-emergency and medical decisions, and religious upbringing. So in Georgia, where there's an order, a custody order on physical custody, there's also going to be a discussion about joint legal custody. And so what happens is the parties have to communicate with each other, but Georgia's going to designate one parent or the other as the final decision maker in that. So that may want to, in that scenario, hopefully ask for and get final decision-making authority in education and or extracurricular activities, if those are the big things that are important to him.
Okay.
And so if you pay for it, though, you got to figure out if mom works, how you going to get the child there.
Yeah. How does that work? Yeah.
Right.
It has to be logistically feasible for said child to attend this school.
Right. Or even, activities, because some people, like, one thing that's really big and expensive, two things. Competition cheerleading is expensive. Oh, three things that I see all the time. Competition cheerleading, which is a lot of travel. AAU basketball.
Been there, done that.
Wait a minute. That baseball, the one, one where they travel baseball. Oh my God. Yeah. So that's a lot of money. And so if you want final decision making, you can't just pay for it. Somebody has to be able to get that child to and from the practices, the games, the competitions, etc. So dad has to contemplate all of that when he's asking for it. Some people think they could just throw money at problems, but with children, that's going to take some physical time commitment.
Any other kind of misconceptions about child support? You just see people like, why are y'all doing this? Like, why are y'all making this so much harder?
Well, just the people that think that, let's say dad's a celebrity or something, and they heard somewhere that they could get like $20,000 a month.
We can't get $20,000 a month of child support.
Well, not usually. Not usually in Georgia. Right. Georgia kind of has a cap, So in Georgia, anything over $30,000 a month is considered high income. So there would have to be a deviation. All right. So anybody 30,000 up, the child support number is going to come out the same on that worksheet that I told you about, that calculator.
Right.
So then mom's going to have to kind of come up with some expenses to get a high income deviation. And there may be some legitimate expenses. And you do want children to kind of have the same lifestyle in both homes. But that doesn't mean necessarily if, dad is a football player that they're going to be living the NFL life over at mom's house too. Right. But you don't want to be at the bare minimum either. So you want the child to share in the economic benefit of the affluent parent, so then you'll do a deviation based on high income. But people come in the door thinking, well, my baby daddy is a baller, and so I want $20,000 a month. And that's just not how it's going to work, sweetheart, especially if he has other children, because he is going to get credit for the other children on that child support worksheet. So typically they're going to land somewhere around $3,500 to $5,000, maybe $6,500.
Right, which is not $20,000 a month.
Not close.
Not close. One thing that I learned working with you. What?
I just remembered another misconception these ladies have.
What is it? Yes.
People who've never been married want to be stay-at-home moms.
What?
I cannot with these women.
Really? So just because you have a child, they don't want to work. So that's why they want the $20,000 a month
they
child
want
support.
To be a stay-at-home mom, and they were never married to dad.
Right.
Oh, that's ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and we have to fight a little bit just to get it to where she recognizes. Sometimes in cases like that, I'll get custody of the child.
Right.
I'll get dad custody. He can pay a nanny before he pay you $20,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, that's got to be a tough reality. I see you felt that one time.
I did. I'm so sick of it. I'm like, wait a minute, I work.
Listen, me too.
Come on, girl, do something.
One thing that I learned working with you was some of the non-financial things to ask for. Yes. Like, I never would have thought about making sure that this parent who's paying child support, make sure that there is a life insurance policy on them, that they do have disability insurance.
Yes.
So I learned some of those things. I was like, that's really important, because God forbid if they pass away,
right,
they get sick and they can't work. And now the amount of money that you're receiving could potentially be impacted.
Right.
Like, get your monthly payment, but please make sure that these other things are in place too.
And what's so interesting about the life insurance is supposed to insure the child support obligation for as long as the child is a minor. Some men are so uncomfortable with that, which is amazing. But you really got to think about it. If you're ordered to pay $5,000 a month and the child is 2, we need to insure that obligation, and It's the outstanding obligation that we're insuring. So you can reasonably revisit that life insurance policy each year and have a lower face value
Right.
on that. So it's just important that you do that, as well as the disability insurance. Also get people to, when I can, start a 529 account.
Okay.
For the children. And sometimes, we may even start a trust for the children or child, depending on, dad and his finances, particularly for people who are like professional athletes, because that's not a forever type of position.
Absolutely.
And so you want to make certain that you do as much as you can while they are active in the league, because as soon as they're out, they're probably going to file for a modification, and
right.
they should.
Right.
They should.
I agree with that.
Yes.
Now, one thing that I also find interesting too, Tanya, is when I hear fathers in particular who are like, I don't trust her with the money. I don't want her to receive that amount of money. But working with you, I've seen how we have been able to kind of carve certain things out.
Right,
like we
right.
pay for tuition directly.
Yes.
We handle all the medical care. So there's certain things that relate to the well-being of the child that we handle directly. Therefore, the amount that the mother is getting is X because we've handled all the other things that are important for the child. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I think it's important, for instance, when you have children that are in daycare, for instance, and mom wants to go to creme de la creme and put their child right there at that $1,800 a month, and she wants you to send her the $1,800, and when the case is over, she's going to go put the child over in Kids Are Kids. Right. So no, what we're going to do is dad's going to pay that amount directly.
Okay.
So that we can make certain that amount is paid. We'll pay for the medical insurance. We'll pay for, sometimes I'll have dad pay for the extracurricular activities because, like I said, the ones that we discussed, the ball and the travel baseball, the AAU basketball, that competition cheerleading, all that stuff is so expensive. I'll have dad pay for those things directly. Mm-hmm. So that's what I normally do, try to have that put in the court order.
That carve out.
As much as possible, as much carve out as possible. Of course, private school too.
Right. Love that.
Absolutely.
Right. Now, you brought up the M word, modification.
Yes.
One of my last questions for you, when is it time? So first of all, explain what modification is, and then when is it the appropriate time to do it?
Okay, so we're talking about the modification of child support?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there has to be a change in circumstances, or it needs to be like 3 years or more. Okay. Now, let's say I am representing the dad, and the dad has a decrease in his income. Let's say, he was playing football, and, he's been keeping in shape, but nobody's called him. Not just that first year, because if you're in football shape, and you try to do that modification that first year, a lot of judges are going to be like, well, wait a minute, but you are waiting on the phone to ring. And judges are aware that sometimes people can get called at the end of the season.
Right.
So I would say if dad is out of whatever league, at least 2 years, and his income has changed significantly, he needs to file a modification of child support at that time. And he can clearly show that his income has decreased. But keep in mind, child support's not just based on income. It's based on assets too. So if dad has, yes, it is. If dad has a lot of assets, a lot of financial assets. So I had a case once where mom was establishing a child support order. Dad had already retired from the NFL. But dad had, I don't know, maybe $5 to $10 million in almost liquid, it looks like to me, based on my discovery, in the various accounts. So what I did was I added all that up. The child was like 1, and I divided it by the number of years that the child had as a minor, and I asked the court to impute that as dad's income, which imputed something like $200,000. It's not over $30,000 a month. But it was a pretty good number.
Sure.
And so you have to, as an attorney, when you go into court, you got to tell the judge how you want to rule. You got to come up with all the creative scenarios and be ready to present it. So, but if dad has, a decrease in income, and let's say he's got that money tied up in things that you've set up for him that are not liquid because he's come to you for his planning,
right?
Then he can absolutely get a decrease in the child support because his finances have changed. Now, sometimes mom may have something that happens and she's making a lot more money because the income of both parents is considered, not just dad's. So let's say dad's kind of, He's been even, no changes, but mom has a huge jump. Okay, that might be a time to file for modification as well. So you just got to file the modification of child support when there has been a change in circumstance.
Circumstances.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
All right.
As anything else child support wise as we wrap up, you think our listeners out here need to know?
Oh my goodness. Just know that you can't avoid it. So,
Gotta pay.
yeah, you do. I mean, don't be on the run like a couple of guys I know. They've just been on the run forever. But you know what? If there's a child support order and you're on the run and the child turns 18, please don't think you're safe.
Okay.
Because if there's an order
Right.
and they catch up with your behind somewhere and the child's 32.
Right.
I had a case where the child was 32, but they finally found that he owed all that child support plus interest. So I want you to know, don't run, don't hide. Pay now in real time while it's just child support instead of child support plus interest.
Right. It's funny you say that. My husband over there in the corner, he has a relative who he knows who I'm talking about, who is, I think he's 60 now, who is still paying child support.
Yes.
Because he had all of this back child support.
Yes.
And his kids are like in their 30s.
Yes.
And they're still getting money. I'm like, this is crazy. You can run, but you can't hide.
You can't hide.
You're going to pay.
They're coming
because
for
he had court-ordered child support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have court-ordered child support,
Right.
you need to just pay it.
You just need to
and pay it in real time so you don't have to pay all that interest.
all the arrears and all that interest.
Yeah. Well,
Ooh,
you're
that
going to pay
sounds
the
painful.
arrears,
Right.
but the interest is what you want to avoid because if you don't pay, they can start adding interest.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter that the children are
Or
emancipated.
grown. Thought
They
you
grown,
were done.
They're grown and they got children.
And they got kids now. You still writing checks.
Right, right.
That is crazy.
Or they're taking your taxes. They can do a tax intercept.
Oh my gosh, I've seen that happen. I know people who won't file
Right.
the taxes because they know child support is
Don't
going to keep
I
it.
know that too? Don't I know that?
Please don't do that. Just please go ahead and
Yeah.
file and let them go ahead and take that money. Please do that. All right, as we close, we want to know one of your Thank Me Later financial tips. So finish this sentence for us. If you blank, you will thank me later.
If you pay your child support now, you'll thank me later because you won't owe the interest. And as you get older and your children are emancipated, you can live free, not dodging from a process server or a sheriff
Right.
coming to get you for your back child support arrearage.
Oh my God. Y'all
Thank
pay
me
that.
later.
Y'all gonna thank Tanya later for paying that child support.
That's right.
Thank you, Tanya Mitchell Graham.
Thank you.
I appreciate you so much. It's been an honor to work with you all this time.
It has been my pleasure. I've learned a lot from you as well.
It's been a pleasure. So if people want to engage with you, file you, hire you, potentially, those of y'all in Georgia who have some child support drama, how do
Right.
people get in touch with you?
Oh, well, shoot. The first way is to call the office, which is 770-492-9013. That's the first way. But if they want to engage with me on social media, it's TMG ESQ, like Tanya Mitchell Graham Esquire, TMG ESQ on all platforms. That would be Twitter, Instagram. I'm big on TikTok for the ladies. Over on Instagram for the guys, it's at TMGPC, which is for the firm. I try to, just separate my platforms with my conversation.
Right.
But yeah, and I'm pretty active on there, and I try to give out tips.
No. She's not pretty. She's active on social media, y'all. So please engage with her on TikTok and with Instagram, please.
Yes.
And I appreciate you doing that because people
Yes.
need to know.
Yeah, I just
from
give out tips.
trusted, reliable source like you.
Thank you.
So any other call to action, anything else as we let these amazing people go?
I just think it's important for people to communicate, parents to communicate and to avoid having the court in your business so much. And that's coming from a lawyer.
Right.
All right.
And you certainly want to remember this is what's best for the child.
Always.
You're doing what's best for the kid, not what's best for you, not what makes you happy by making the other person suffer. You have to do what's best for the child. Please do that. So if you want to continue to engage with us, you can engage with us on all the social media platforms. My personal is at Jini Thornton and then TML Money. You can also engage with us for other episodes of the show at thankmelatershow.com. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in with us. And if you want any more help, we are here for you. And we are the show where we help you master your money and transform your life. We'll see you on the next episode.